Look, everybody's mad at Rushnara Ali, right? Like, everybody's mad at her.
Mhm.
And
That's true.
I think, like, why are we mad at the Parliamentary Undersecretary of State for Homelessness for creating more homeless people?
Yeah, I mean, it's like, listen, they always tell you in school, you know, if you finish your work early, you can just ask for more, right? And so I assume that's what she was doing.
Yeah. The only thing that can explain why one of the many landlords of Parliament that are associated with the Labour Party, as well as the Green Party. Hey, Adrian Ramsey, another landlord. Huh,
Interesting.
cool.
Interesting. Curious.
I liked his sort of little sort of kind of justification of it. Like, oh, like I co-own this house of someone else and I don't even make any profit from it.
Becoming a landlord can strike at any time, you know?
Well, the impression that I just sort of got, and also what was very funny from like aspect, again, I don't want to make this like the show about what happened on Twitter, but like there were a few like, you know, of those sort of business entrepreneur guys online who were just like, yeah, this just means you're a bad landlord. And it's like, yeah, good point. Like, you know, all sort of like good politics aside, is I feel like the sort of defense of actually I'm not very good at my job is a very funny one.
It is novel, I will say. Moving out of one flat where the landlord evicted me to sell it into another flat where the landlord will not answer emails or phone calls or texts.
Because it gives them anxiety. Yeah.
It's sort of like my work life and my personal life are really converging in the form of what new landlord hell will I have to deal with today? And this is certainly one.
So for US listeners who may not know, Rushanara Ali was the Labour Under Minister for Homelessness, also a landlord, and also in contravention to the Renters' Rights Bill that's simply not yet law, she kicked out all of tenants of a house she owned, raised the rent by £700, and I think serves as a wonderful object lesson as to the pure political impunity of, well, what do you mean? Well, it's fine. Look, I'm not a bad person. I'm a nice person.
It's interesting. I mean, I didn't know that there were resigning offences in this government. And obviously, I think they're going to be extremely salty about the fact that she has had to resign. And I look forward to a kind of Jonathan Ashworth situation where she's now, or, you know, a Tangam Debonair, where she's now on TV for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, I can't wait for her to become the head of a pressure group that is financed entirely by like Peabody called like Labour Yimby.
Just out of curiosity and further to that, what's her majority in Bethnal Green and Bow, and how's it looking when you add in your _party final brackets real?
I wouldn't worry about it.
Okay, sure.
No.
Good.
There were like protests again, yeah, because like I remember like because her office is if you take the bus to our studio.
Don't show up at the front door, but like to be honest, like based on the neighborhood, that's more for your safety than anything else.
Yeah.
On the way to our dungeon, on the way to our basement, you like one of the buses goes past her office, and there was a period of time where like there were just like people outside of it like protesting all the time. And I think it may have been to do with Gaza. It may have been to do with like the way that she voted, or that she had abstained on like one of the key votes, and that was sort of akin to like
she abstained on the SNP motion for the ceasefire.
Well,
okay, right, yeah,
in
right.
her defense, she was very busy thinking about how to evict her tenants.
Yeah, look, she meant to walk through the yes lobby. Unfortunately, she just gotten the text from her tenants that were like, "Hey, the black mold is still here," and then she was so annoyed that she walked through the abstention lobby. And I think that's fine.
Yeah, the sort of natural consequence of the kind of Alex Davis Jones thing of it should be illegal to at me, right? Is it should be illegal to at your landlord as well.
Well, hey, we're going to talk a little bit about the broader context of the Alex Davis Jones things. Welcome to TF. It is Hussein, it's Nova, it's Riley.
Oh, hey, we remembered to introduce the show this time.
Yeah, that's right. Look, you know, sometimes we like to do things a little differently. But we're going to talk about a few things of the politics, and then boy, did I read an article about a certain freakazoid who we have liked to talk about many times.
Delightful.
Yes. So this is about to be less delightful because I think it's important to talk about the Palestine Action protest that happened at the weekend.
I'm sorry. Do you mean the worst terrorist attack in British history? Because on the numbers, that's like 4 years worth of terrorism act arrests that happened in an afternoon. So I assume the terrorism must have been atrocious.
It would have been, well, by the numbers, it would have been, let's see, divided by 20.
Hold on a second. It only took 19 people to do 9/11. So if you arrest like 460 people, that's
that's a lot of 9/11. That's multiple 9/11.
It's certainly multiple. I'm trying to work out exactly how many multiple. Why that's 41.81 recurring 9/11s.
Well, we don't build a lot of tall buildings in London, so that would really change the skyline.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the one like suspended pool between the two apartment buildings, that getting 9/11.
They would have so many spare 9/11 planes that they'd be able to waste some just on like end zone dances, like flying one through the suspended pool,
doing gender affirming surgery on the gherkin. So anyway, like a hearty salute to the Metropolitan Police for preventing that many 9/11s by arresting a bunch of retired vicars for exercising, what some might describe as their freedom of speech, if such a thing still exists.
So I'll say this, because the law is what it is here, we're going to largely have to stick to discussing the legislation itself and how the law was enforced in this case.
Yeah, on the basis that like what these people did was to sit down in Parliament Square with a placard and write on that placard, "I oppose genocide, I support Palestine Action," which is a criminal offense for which you can get 14 years in prison.
Yeah.
Not a criminal offense to report that. Yeah. I am slightly curious, and I'm asking myself, kind of like learned comrades here, at what point does it stop being a terrorist offense to support? Is supporting those people supporting Palestine Action? Is supporting people who support those people Palestine Action? Are you allowed to say anything kind of complimentary in the general direction of anyone who is in Parliament Square?
My understanding of how the law is drafted is like so many pieces of the British security state. The drafting of the law is ridiculously broad and allows for a huge amount of leeway. So, for example, if you recklessly invite support for, right? So if you're doing donuts in Parliament Square and you accidentally, without meaning to, write that out, then that would be considered support.
Well, here's the thing. Labour MPs have been briefing that actually there was some super secret intelligence that, of course, you and I are not allowed to see, that was going to demonstrate the necessity of this, because I imagine Palestine Action was, just in some heavily compromised group chat plotting these, 49/11s or whatever. And then that was heralded not by mass arrests of, any of their members at the time, but by arrests of people supporting them.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure how that adds up. But
largely octogenarians. It must have been maybe it was going to be mobility scooter 9/11.
Well, yeah, this is the thing. Like, we love in this country a movie about like old bastard does something inspirational. There were like 3 of those movies in 1 year a while ago of like, like daft old fucker escapes from like nursing home to like Remember the Fallen or something. So by the same token, it would seem perhaps Granny 9/11 was in the offing. I don't know. I don't know. And therefore it would be, I wouldn't ever want to recklessly support that. So
we have no way of knowing how many of them were Harry Browns. You
got to be careful, like what kind of nan you support now, right? Because before you could just support all, you could sort of go and be like, I support nans, and people couldn't yell at you about it because they'd be like, yeah, we also support nans too. But now it's like, well, what kind of nan are you?
Are you a radicalized nan? If you run into an older white woman in this country, you have a duty now to ask, do you condemn Palestine Action? And if they won't do it, what is that telling? I mean, the thing I think about is like transmissibility, right? Like it's sort of like, it seems to me that support for Palestine Action is a kind of like homeopathic thing, right? And that it doesn't dilute, right? It intensifies. So if you just say like, something supportive of anyone, say, if that person has supported someone who supported someone who supported someone who supported Palestine Action, prison. And so I'm really hopeful on this basis. I'm optimistic that we can, God willing, get the whole country in prison where we belong. Our sick fucks.
How dare this entire country be out on the streets?
We're just walking around.
So, I mean, the funny thing is, I'll get back to this in a second, that the conservative YIMBY, I know the Labor YIMBY was in my head for a reason, that conservative YIMBY, which is like a group that is like supported by Onward, the sort of center-right think tank in the Conservative Party, is actually saying, look, we have too much migration, we have a massive housing shortage, and we have prison overcrowding. what can we do about this? And they're like,
All
hey.
houses, prisons. HMP, your home address. I mean, here's the thing as
No,
well.
they're basically saying we're going to build a bunch of new towns that are all anchored by the private prison industry.
Oh,
Yeah.
rancid.
I kind of lived in a place like that in the sense of like one of the big landmarks of where I used to live was Belmarsh Prison. And I would always point it out to people when I would drive and be like, that's Belmarsh Prison. And so many people around here like exist to serve that prison, whether like, you know, you're in catering or whether you're sort of, there were lots of people who just like did random jobs for the prison. So yeah, we can build more of those types of towns. It was really nice to live there.
I mean,
and like the vibe was great.
We like increased the chances of another Daniel Khalifa event, right? In the form of like the nation's hearts are won by like one escaping twink. Apart from anything else.
Well, yeah. Well, what happens if what happens if like the Daniel Khalifa thing happens, but it actually is a gnat?
The Great Escaper brackets real.
That's like a movie, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, here's the thing, right? Like, I know why like on Palestine action, you aren't getting all of the people who are hugely concerned, like the Free Speech Union, right? All of the people who really wanted to say slurs, all the people whose concern was like, oh, well, you know, I want to be able to say what I want to say about Muslims. I want to be able to say what I want to say about trans people, je suis Charlie, or whatever, right? Why those people aren't generally lining up to get arrested. However, you have to say it's a disappointing day if you genuinely had any kind of sentiment towards like non-partisan freedom of speech here, you know?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I mean, you know, Brendan O'Neill has been banging the drum for like the one bit of freedom of speech he does not believe in, apparently.
Curious. Yeah. Well, you see, the thing is, like, this is actually like sort of an emergent situation, and we just have to trust the government that, you know, their intel on Granny 9/11 makes it sufficient.
So basically, what I want to sort of talk about is like the law itself, the politics of enforcement. And at this point, I'm simply going to quote from what's been written in press and presumably legal to hell and back. So Yvette Cooper has said, you alluded to this earlier, Nova, the decision to prescribe was based on strong security advice and a unanimous recommendation by expert cross-government prescription review group. It also was, by the way, heavily supported by people like John Woodcock.
Sure.
Quote, it also follows disturbing information referencing planning for further attacks. Again, implying that there's like...
Implying that there have been attacks.
That there have been attacks to people.
You know, vandalism, you know?
Destruction of property.
Yeah, sure. I mean, listen, I'll count that as an attack in the kind of semantic sense, but not as a kind of like justification for this. Not
in the sense that they're saying they're planning further attacks and heavily implying that I'll read the whole quote. We can see what she's heavily implying. It also follows disturbing information referencing planning for further attacks, the details of which cannot yet be publicly reported due to ongoing legal proceedings. Those who seek to support this group may yet not know the true nature of the organization, but people should be under no illusion. This is not a peaceful or nonviolent protest group. So if you're thinking of that sentence, right, it follows disturbing information referencing planning for further attacks and then saying you have to know this is not a peaceful or nonviolent protest group. The strong implication that you're meant to take away is that they've already been like attacking people, right? And that there's further danger to life, even though on knowledge and belief, there has not yet been any danger to life, but it's implying that there is further danger to life.
Yeah, this is the weird disconnect in the tone, right? Where the enforcement is like, don't support Palestine action, or don't say you support Palestine action, or you will receive, you know, some kind of like criminal sentence. The Met have been hyping up the fact that like, oh, it's effectively like a, you know, you will always fail a criminal records check, so you won't be able to get a job as like a teacher or, you know, in the civil service. You won't be able to travel to the US and stuff. But then on the other hand, it's also you're going to feel pretty foolish when we announce, you know, that actually we just broke up the Granny 9/11 planning group chat.
Yeah.
It's like, well, would I really feel foolish about that? Like, I'm not so sure.
And again, the implication is quite strong, which is basically justify our these emergency, unprecedented use of counterterrorism legislation because we have knowledge that we cannot share.
Yeah, I mean, like, honestly, the whole regime of prescription is like so fucking terrifyingly Orwellian, right? That like even the groups that are like should be applied to, it kind of shouldn't be, if you follow me. Like there's like partially because I think for those groups, it's like either hardly ever enforced, like when's the last time you saw someone get like prosecuted for supporting a prescribed like Northern Irish loyalist organization, or because it's like actively kind of doing them a favor in the terms of like some of the more esoteric like jihadist or Nazi ones. So it's just like, what good is this actually doing? And even if I take your premise of Granny 9/11 was around the corner, right? To what extent was arresting a bunch of vicars for carrying placards saying unwittingly, even within that kind of hypothetical, that they supported the group that was going to do it? How did that actively make anyone safer?
Yeah, it is. I mean, well, we can see another Labor backbencher was quoted, and this was going to make, some blood boil. Mass arresting of pensioners is clearly not what this legislation was designed for. Is it really? Because that's what it seems to be designed for.
Yeah, it's working quite well at something that it wasn't designed to do. I mean, that is sort of true, but it's like at the same time, it was written so broadly as to contain that possibility, right? Yeah. And I think like as well, the thing that makes a bit of a lie of the security services told us to do it, right? And advised very strongly us to do it, is that reading between the lines, you could see a lot of briefing against it before it came into force. You could see a lot of like, people working in the Home Office have like serious concerns about this, about how this is going to impact their ability to like actively investigate terrorism. And so I'm just left with this feeling that it's purely meant to be punitive and meant to be exemplary, right? That it's meant to dissuade protest, and it's meant to do that by like punishing you with like, you'll never be able to pass a CRB check or whatever.
Yeah, it says we were told the security apparatus had requested this. So we, the lawmakers, were told the security apparatus had requested this, and we do in the end need to trust that they have the information that we're not privy to that supports this.
No, you don't, motherfucker. Whatever happened to like parliamentary like oversight? Whatever happened to the parliamentary primacy? Like, that's your job. That's what you're there for. It's like one of the key responsibilities you're elected to fulfill.
The church committee was all about saying thank you to the CIA, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, pretty much.
So based on information that cannot be publicly shared, the public is being asked to trust the Home Secretary that this prescription is good and necessary.
Well, I don't. So now what? Like, this is the thing. If I don't trust Yvette Cooper's judgment on this, and I don't take her word for it, then my recourse is to sit there and shut up about it, or to, risk going to prison.
Also, I want to talk about, we've alluded to a lot of nans. If you're not in the UK, again, you might be sort of wondering, why do they keep talking about like old people and pensioners getting arrested?
Nan is one of your parents' mums.
Yes, but I'm now going to, but this is like, again, there's a lot of progressive and left-wing protest. A lot of it in this country tends to be done by, there's a lot of like well-meaning old people who do a lot of it.
This is true. I mean, partially it's a kind of criterion of arrestability, right? Yeah. That if you are already retired, it's a lot more plausible to be like, well, actually, I don't care about any of the consequences you're threatening me with.
Yeah. And so I now, again, this is just reading from The Observer, and people are being quoted in The Observer. So all of this is from The Observer. Again, ironic that The Observer seems to be taking the tone, right, that this is a sort of quite extreme overreach.
Really?
Right?
Well, lock him up, the sick bastards.
Yeah. I mean, it is probably worth noting, this isn't to sort of justify it by any means, but The Observer is now under like new ownership, right?
I think it's under more right-wing ownership.
Is it more? Okay, well, I mean, I can't comment on that, but it was just like...
all I have to say is this kind of disrespect for the law cannot stand, and the Observer's offices must be raided by counterterrorism policing immediately.
Unfortunately, Sonia Soda, your expression of support for The Observer has...
Fuck. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm afraid The Observer cannot be allowed to operate in a civil society of laws.
Well, the thing is, we actually have intelligence about The Observer that you can't see it, but just trust us that we have knowledge that you don't.
Oh, yeah. The Observer was actually going to do like several of the 9/11s, we think.
And the thing is, right, The Observer is just a kind of like Western way of just laundering the still more depraved actions of The Guardian, right? And so when you say, I support The Observer, what you're really saying is, I support The Guardian, which surely should be beyond the pale for any civil society.
Well, in fact, a lot of people don't know about this, but taqiyya is one of the pillars.
Do you condemn The Guardian, in fact?
Yeah. How about this? The Observer, just start condemning, right? It's safer if you just condemn.
Yeah, just go along with it.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, that's basically what everyone's been doing. Like the opposition to this has been like, oh, this seems like overreach. Okay, was that it? Thanks, I guess.
Yeah. So they're also, I note that the Observer and the Guardian are the thing they're getting quite head up about. Well, I'll read their profiles of the people getting arrested. So, many among the silent protesters in Parliament Square yesterday had to be asked if they were mobile enough to make the short walk to the police van. Among their number were nurses, doctors, architects, and teachers, most of them retired, and many veterans of other causes, including Extinction Rebellion. Anthony Whiteson, 76, a retired IT analyst and grandfather, sat wearing a yarmulke and a Star of David on a chain around his neck. He said, "For me, this is part of what it means to be Jewish, to take action against genocide when there's a regime acting like the perpetrators of the Holocaust." He added that he has never been arrested before. Among the arrests were the environmentalist Sir Jonathan Porritt and former Guantanamo Bay prisoner Muazzam Beg, who runs the advocacy group Cage, whose stated aim is challenging quote-unquote war and terror-driven state oppression. Others arrested in recent weeks and months have included Deborah Hinton, 81, a former British magistrate who was honored by the late Queen Elizabeth II for services to the community, John Farley, a retired school principal, who was silently holding a cartoon from a satirical magazine, Marianne Sorrell, another former teacher, now 80, who was held by police for almost 27 hours and had her home searched, and Reverend Sue Parfit, an 83-year-old retired priest. And it goes on like this and on like this and on like this. They
arrested Alice Oswald, who is like probably one of our greatest living poets. Like, and if you think about any of the stuff that like David Lammy say, or like any other British foreign secretary gets up and says about any other country, right? Particularly about Russia, for instance, right? Not that he's wrong to do it, but to be like, obviously this shows the kind of depravity of Putin to like arrest like single person protests, even to the point of like holding up like a blank sign that like theoretically might be protesting the war. It's like, well, you see immediately the kind of hypocrisy there in that this is just like, we're perfectly happy to exercise this kind of state repression. And it's not even for like a war that we're doing. It's a war that our client state is doing that we're just determined to try and run cover for as long as possible.
Yeah. And as we say, this is extraordinarily unprecedented. It's drawn condemnation from the UN, Amnesty UK, Amnesty International, and seems to be alienating good, conscientious liberals from the Labour Party, you know, people, and like not to sort of talk about too much political arithmetic, right? But someone like Rushnara Ali, who's got who had a majority of 35,000 / 1,700 in the 2024 election, largely by a Gaza independent, you know?
Yeah.
You know, even if she didn't do this sort of renters' rights whoopsie, then you could very much see that it's like, okay, well, this is the party that in the span of 1 week suggested that critics of the online safety bill were in league with the ghost of Jimmy Savile, and then had all of the nans arrested.
Yeah. It's lots of good reasons why squishy libs might consider hopping ship to, you know, depends on who's in their constituency. But the Greens, like Corbyn Party _final, the Lib Dems.
Lib Dems are very good at making hay out of this kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And they do have like enough of a tradition of like civil libertarianism, as admittedly hypocritical as it's been, to like really kind of like hammer on that if they want to. So it feels like, apart from anything else, I know this is what it's for. This is what they want to do, and it's a thrill to them, right? Like the Met as well, and I'll talk about the Met in a second, but like it's such a miscalculation that it really feels like an attempt to get the lowest possible number of seats for Labour MPs whenever the next election is.
It's not golf. It's not golf rules, is what you're saying.
It turns out that actually number big, better.
Okay.
The other thing that was striking to me about this was the Met Police communications about it, right? Because it was curiously vindictive and petty. Not to say that it's a surprise that the Met are either of these things. Certainly the arrests weren't a surprise, right? But like the tone of the announcements that they were giving out about them felt weirdly governmental. There was this, they were doing like epic clapbacks against Defend Our Juries, which was the organization that was organizing the protest, saying stuff like, oh, no, that claim simply isn't true or whatever. And it's like, hold on, why is the police doing this? Why are the police talking like this instead of the usual kind of pro forma police announcement? And I feel like the answer is in part because it's something that makes them genuinely enthusiastic, and in part because the Home Office and Number 10 kind of know that this is like a big ask and are pushing for it. And so it's something that requires like all of these institutions down the line to kind of show willing and to show enthusiasm and be like, yeah, you will be arrested and your life will be ruined if you support Palestine action.
Yeah, it is the whole machinery of the state is falling in step behind this. And it is such an unprecedented move that you can hear it creaking. For example, 500 custody cells in London. There are 500.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it depends on most of the people you arrest being kind of compliant enough that you can put them in like a pop-up gazebo style thing and be like, we will charge you later. We'll just take your details now, which is what they did. And meanwhile, the sort of like far right, like would-be hotel arsons sort of like simmering across the country as well. And sort of like various figures on the right are like talking fairly openly about civil war and revolution and sort of like murmuring about blood in the streets. And it all feels very bad. But I'm also not to kind of like hype up the civil rights thing because, I'm a materialist and I know that these things are always kind of like contingent. But a couple of weeks ago, I didn't live in a country where I knew and had the kind of intrusive thought like, oh, hey, you could get arrested in a genuinely like destructive way for writing 2 sentences on a piece of paper in public, right? Like two, I would say now pretty well-known sentences anyway. And it's like, that is a distinct change in the vibe around here, which is like, even for people who have already been surveilled and have already been subject to the kind of sharp end of the state, the stuff, that's a change.
Yeah. I think it's probably also worth noting that like so much of this is also about optics as well. And so it's like the sort of scenes that we saw of like nans being arrested and like people in wheelchairs and stuff being arrested and like the genuine shock, even among kind of like fairly normal people. I don't know whether you saw like there was a clip about from like Andrew Neil sort of going around today. And it was quite like, not to sort of give him credit at all because, he's still like piece of shit. But he was also sort of saying that like, oh, like these Palestine action arrests like in public for like demonstrating, they're a bit much, aren't they? Like, the government might be sort of like going too far on this.
I'm afraid Andrew Neil, it's not safe. It's not safe to have him on the streets.
That's right. That's correct.
Get this sick motherfucker in Belmarsh.
And I do wonder, there's a part of me that's just like wondering that, okay, well, the precedent that's sort of been set here is kind of like the police wanting to sort of show that they are sort of a more active, like under sort of like a bit more sort of like public scrutiny, sort of showing that they are an active like protective force or whatever, but also kind of like ceding to the demands of like people who have projected their own fantasies as to like who their sort of perceived enemies are. And in the case of like Palestine Action, like it sort of being presented by the government as being this like really insidious, dark, evil group that have like so many nefarious plans that are so evil that you can't even imagine what they're going to do. In many ways, very similar to like how the Israeli government still talks about, or like how like people who support Israel like talk about Hamas, right? The idea that, oh no, we have to destroy everyone. We have to like, these measures that we're doing, like which include like, mass starvation and sort of carpet bombing every day. They're necessary because you don't know like what Hamas are actually going to do. And we have the intelligence to prove that actually like they're going to do like the big 9/11, right? They're going to do like a million 9/11s. They'll be doing 9/11s every single day. So we have to do the 9/11s every single day to make sure that they don't do it. That's the reason, like, that's sort of their justification behind it.
Yeah, and at least Hamas kind of did do a 9/11. Palestine Action didn't haven't even achieved like 0.001 9/11.
But it's a good example of like that vibe shift because again, like, again, not to sort of, well, actually, I don't know, like, Ta-Nehisi Coates like sort of says, has said this like multiple times, including in like his like book, the most recent book where he talks about Palestine, which is just like, well, if like so-called like Democrats are able to, and people who believe in like democracy are able to sort of like, rationalize and justify a genocide, then they can also, democracy probably doesn't mean that much to them. And the whole point being that like eventually these tactics and strategies and all the stuff that you sort of accept as necessary in order to sort of defend your democracy, like it will eventually come to you. And at that point, there is nothing that you can really do to stop it. And I think we're sort of seeing, we're seeing elements of it. We are seeing elements of it in America. Like, Trump has sort of announced that like the National Guard is about to like sort of take over Washington. So that's cool. And in the UK, it's like obviously like, nothing to like that level because we're doing America, but on like a shoestring budget. So instead we just have like angrier police and smarmier police officers that are just like, oh, you don't think we're going to arrest your gran? You don't think we're going to arrest Sweet Nan giving out Werther's Originals in Parliament Square? Well, fuck you. We're going to do that. And we're going to we're going to bring out the special handcuffs as well. The ones with of like spikes on them.
Yeah.
You know, and like I sort of feel like, you know, for them it's like the optics of like they want to sort of be shown as being like a brutal police force because their calculation is that like that sort of works well for their sort of public image or their optics and everything.
Yeah.
But again, the reality is like, no, it just makes you come across as being like fucking vindictive losers. But also like there are people who are looking at this and being like, oh, hey, like if this can be used for like, you know, the Palestine Action protesters who aren't really doing anything, they can probably be used on like the far right, like protesters who really want a fucking civil war as well. Right. And like, what are you going to do when that happens? So I do sort of think that like this, I have a feeling that this is going to sort of be seen as like a gross, I don't know if it's going to be seen as like a gross miscalculation, but it will be one of those moments where it's just like, oh, like there was this sort of, as Nova's sort of put out, there is this like very noticeable change in the vibe, and we're going to sort of see the ramifications of that as arrests for like what are pretty arbitrary and fairly normal things in public demonstrations, public protests, and even private protests, like begin to be criminalized to the extent of like, yeah, writing things on cardboard is akin to doing 9/11.
Well, I have a slightly different feeling about this. And I hope I haven't just been like tossed the dodgeball of prophecy here, right? Because I think I always like saying, right, that I hate it when the state defends itself against the left, but I love when the state defends itself against the right, right? But like, if we've seen anything from the last round of riots, and indeed the current one, it's the kind of the actually existing model of two-tier policing, right, is that the state doesn't defend itself against the right any more than it possibly has to. It strikes me that there are two reasons why. One is the kind of like cringing agreement, either out of like genuinely shared bigotry or like fear that you know, we should just give these people what they want. But it's also because tactically the far right is much more willing to offer violence, right? You don't see, generally speaking, a sort of far right cause célèbre being a bunch of retired vicars get arrested, right? What it is a bunch of people who are very determined to fist fight the police. And what that means, that has been a much more successful strategy for the right than it ever has been for the left because of that first part. What that means for, you know, the right's prospects, what that means for like a future of protest on the left, probably nothing good for anyone in either case, is my feeling. Like, I if you want me to put like a button on it, right?
Yeah,
I don't
please.
think that this leads towards like we have just prescribed Reform UK Nigel Farage is being executed as we speak, right? I think it's more likely to lead to Prime Minister Farage prescribing Corbyn party.
Well, yes, quite, right? And it's not to say that he necessarily needed... He could have realistically come up with the justification himself, but hey, this makes it a whole fuck of a lot easier.
Yeah, it's
right?
just like moving the extra step for him, you know?
Well, yeah, because police have already shown in Kent that they're willing to make arrests for statements in support of Palestine, right? Because
just in general.
Yeah,
you know?
just in general, because they're going to they have interpreted this law, right? So it's not so far-fetched for a Farage government to just say, or a fucking Starmer government, to be honest, to just say, okay, your party, they've been very supportive of Palestine, so that's enough for us to sort of homeopathically say that this is also an expression of support for a prescribed group. So I guess we have to arrest them
like
all.
within the statute. It's not a stretch. That's how broadly it's written.
Yeah. And so like I see people, you know, like James Ball and stuff getting people like, you know, old supporters of people who love Starmer, right? And James Ball, Ian Dunn, people like this.
Finally some seriousness.
Yeah. And they're stuck scratching their heads being like, why would the Starmer government make such an error? Why would they fuck up this badly?
I have a fun theory about this. Are we familiar with the Russian political concept of good Tsar, bad boyars? Right? Like the guy in charge, he's good, right? It's just he doesn't know, right? I really like the idea of doing that with Starmer and being like, if only and I remind you, human rights lawyer in Downing Street knew what that woman Yvette Cooper was doing in his name. You know?
Yeah, she's sort of the Rasputin of this situation. So it's also like, I don't think you can be said that this was an error, right? This is what the government has repeatedly said it wants to do. Clamp down, show strength, zero tolerance, lest anyone mistake them for sympathizing with the opposition to the U.S. foreign policy consensus and opposition to the Daily Mail commentators who all think they're chomos and terrorists anyway.
Well, yeah, I mean, because it's never going to be enough for these people, right? Because what these people want to see isn't like people getting arrested. They want to see people getting killed. They want to see these people get beaten to death.
Yeah. So, Yvette Cooper and Keir Starmer are now relishing that they're getting to show Britain and the world that they're tough enough to stand up to largely little old ladies and retired vicars. Because right now, Alex Davies Jones, it all comes back to the beginning, has been sent around all the morning shows saying nobody is above the law, to even people like Richard Madeley, who ordinarily has the IQ of a spaniel, and yet even he is able to see that this is kind of a fucked up situation and is actually asking, this is what it took, I guess, for him to actually ask a follow-up question.
Well, this is kind of the general trend of these things whenever they happen, right? Is people are genuinely very surprised by the vibe shift until they're not. And there are a lot of like kind of dumber people who just haven't ever thought about this, being like, well, that doesn't seem right. And then they just get overwhelmed one way or the other. So, and I mean, to be honest, Richard Madeley, I think they can send him to prison too. I don't care.
Yeah.
Never thought I'd be in the gulag side by side with Richard Madeley.
No, but how about a friend?
Still no.
Yeah, like that's okay. Richard Madeley, it was pretty reckless of you to ask those follow-up questions.
Yeah. Why did he do that? Was that a form of support of Palestine action?
Yeah. So, hey, that was, again, I want to be clear, 30 minutes of discussion about this law and how it is being enforced. That is it. Okay. I want to read an article. We're gonna take a jump. We're gonna take a jump to California because the New York Times has published an article that, and again, this is not one of these articles that is written by an airhead. This is one of these articles that is written by someone who is simply covering the goings on in the San Francisco Bay Area.
Sure. A lot of goings on out there, I hear.
Oh my God, the goings on are crazy. So this is an article entitled, What Happened When Mark Zuckerberg Moved In Next Door? And that's by Heather Knight from the New York Times. Now, I want to précis this by having everyone remember Sarah Wynne Williams, apparently listener to the show. So hello, Sarah.
Hi, Sarah.
Yeah. Sarah Wynne Williams' book, Careless People, which explores exactly what a complete psycho Mark Zuckerberg is.
Great book.
Yeah.
Learned a lot more about Sheryl Sandberg than I thought or wanted to.
Yes, that is right. So this is all about what it's like to live next to this man. Some are calling him the greatest neighbor in history.
It's just like looking out of the window and Mark Zuckerberg personally carrying like a wakeboard and a bunch of ecloirs out of a van. I'm just like, oh, for fuck's sake. He's got a flamethrower.
Yeah. Oh God, I can't believe. I wish he would would go into his like MMA phase from his epic phase. This is super annoying to live with.
Just like large print t-shirt that just says Caecilius est in horta. We could sell that. We could very easily sell that. That would be super easy to make.
Look, Marcus est in horto, and his horto is pretty fucking large. So, for decades, the Crescent Park neighborhood of Palo Alto represented the dream of California living. And by the way, this is one of the richest neighborhoods in modern America, which makes it one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in history outside of, I don't know, Timbuktu under Mansa Musa.
I am ready to sympathize with almost anyone in this situation.
Yeah. This is a real like Bill Gross and his neighbor situation where again his neighbor's a biotech CEO, but I'm like all power to the bio. If we were Hearts of Iron, the Soviet Union would send millions of like conscripted reindeer farmers to fight that man's side yard dispute.
Here's the thing, like it's sort of like becoming like having your own gravitational well. Mark Zuckerberg is so rich that he creates his own second proletariat around him.
So doctors, lawyers, and business executives and Stanford professors lived in charming homes under oak, redwood, and magnolia trees. The houses, an eclectic mix including craftsmen's and bungalows, were filled with families who became fast friends. The annual block parties heaved with people, daily life was tranquil, and the soundtrack was one of children laughing as they rode their bicycles and played in one another's gardens. Again, this is a situation created by the extreme and militarized protection of these people's well-being.
Yeah, this is already the garden party from Zone of Interest. Yes, of course. However, Mark Zuckerberg is wakeboarding towards it at a terrible pace.
We are creating a second zone.
A zone of compound interest.
This is like where in Children of Men, when Theo crosses into like the Mall, and suddenly it's like people walking flamingos and stuff.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. It's like, okay, this is one step removed from that. This is one more. This is the person who's like tormenting the flamingo walkers. So Then Mark Zuckerberg moved in. Since his arrival 14 years ago, Crescent Park's neighborhood tranquility and even many of its actual residents have vanished. Residents hardly ever see the Facebook founder, now worth over $250 billion, but they feel his presence every day.
It's sort of like the ecosystem required to sustain being a billionaire is so like unnaturally strange that it does just depopulate things around. Like J.K. Rowling's bit of Edinburgh as well. Mm-hmm. It's like it just, even when they're not there, it's just, you kind of see why kings used to have to go and build the like hunting lodge outside of town, you know, like a Versailles or whatever, is you need a compound for this shit. You can't just live in a house.
Yeah, it's so unnatural that this happens, that unless you can create miles of space between you and the closest person who isn't either immediately related to you or wearing an exploding collar, then like that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
Right? So Mr. Zuckerberg has used his Edgewood Drive and Hamilton Avenue in Crescent Park like a Monopoly game board, spending more than $110 million to scoop up at least 11 houses. You'd think there'd be more houses for 110 mil, but that's the Bay Area for you.
Yeah.
Several of his properties sit empty in this crunched housing market, and he's turned 5 of them into a compound with a main house for him, his wife Priscilla, their 3 daughters, along with guest homes, lush gardens, a nearby pickleball court, a pool that can be covered with a hydro floor to become a dance floor, and a 7-foot statue depicting Priscilla Chan in a silver flowing robe that Mark Zuckerberg commissioned last year and sits on the property.
Your use of the word compound here does have me engaging in a fantasy where President Trump sends SEAL Team 6 to crash an experimental helicopter next to Mark Zuckerberg's compound.
Yeah, they didn't. They thought the hydro floor would be up, but instead they just land in the pool. Also, I like that he's built a giant wife for himself.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, wife guy is normally a relatable characteristic, but when you start introducing the like 7-foot statue in the compound, I'm like,
oh my God, I built this giant statue of my wife and there's a slide that goes right into her mouth. I hope I don't slip on it. Oh no. Oh no! Her robot foot is crushing me. Oh, this is terrible.
Can I say something that I think Mark Zuckerberg may like and may not? This is one of the most evocative of a Roman emperor things he's yet done.
Mm-hmm. Oh, 100%.
I was going to say this feels like a sign of like a guy who absolutely has cheated and is continuing to cheat.
Yeah. Oh, come on. He'd never do that. The compound is encircled by a high row of hedges, and there's no such thing as knocking on the front door to borrow a cup of sugar. One of the unoccupied buildings is used as entertainment and a staging ground for outdoor parties. Another property has been used in the past few years as a private school for 14 children, even though that's not allowable as for the use of a house under the neighborhood city code. 6 adults, including 4 teachers, worked there this past school year.
Troubling. Yeah, I was tutored by Mark Zuckerberg.
Mm-hmm. I was tutored by the giant by the utterances of the giant silver statue of Mark Zuckerberg's wife.
This is unhealthy. I don't think you should have a like mandatory axe throwing sort of lesson.
Yeah, I just don't think that religious studies should include shrimp Jesus. You know, call me a traditionalist. You know, underneath the compound, Zuckerberg has added 7,000 square feet of space, cavernous areas that his building permits refer to as basements, but that his neighbors call bunkers, which has led to 8 years of construction, filling the streets with massive equipment and a lot of noise. That's the thing. If you're pretty sure that any random person you see is going to kill you because you're a $250 trillionaire, then you're going to have to spend a lot of time basically fortifying everywhere you are.
At IDF on Twitter, I've received intelligence on a Hamas command center at these coordinates. Please send a bunker buster missile.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, it's got a school on top of it. Never stopped him before.
So Mr. Zuckerberg has also brought intense levels of surveillance to the neighborhood, including cameras positioned at his homes and views of his neighbor's property. So isn't that cool? You've made some piddly $10 million. You bought this house when it was worth $2 million, and you're living off the annuities of the other 8 because you were like, I don't know, you were a partner at a San Francisco law firm and you worked on a couple big startup acquisitions in like the 90s.
Which, you know, I'll tell you what, you're selling your own labor makes you proletarian.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a humble source of the earth senior cardiologist or like...
and a humble salt of the earth biotech executive.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's he sells his
You're
labor.
a wage cuck. Yes.
Yeah. look, if you've only sold one company, you're a wage cuck as far as he's concerned. And he's gonna point a camera at your house because he knows that you and the other, like, you know, disaffected proletarians, such as like professors who spun out companies from Stanford, senior counsel at Bay Area law firms, as you say, Nova, senior cardiologists, are going to show up with like very expensive pitchforks that they bought from Williams-Sonoma.
Yeah, it's like having this image in my head, because I'm a billionaire, of like the big stability meter, like Hearts of Iron style for the US, dipping below a certain number, and then the like best cardiologist on the West Coast, his wife and kids, all run at my ramparts like the kids from Weapons.
So he has a team of private security guards who sit in cars filming visitors and asking people what they're doing as they walk on public sidewalks. Yeah. So like, hey, don't go for a walk. It's easy. It's easy. Just don't go for a walk there because he's too important for you to walk.
Yeah, he's not even necessarily in residence. Like they would raise a kind of like Roman sort of vexilla if he were, but like, you know, he could be at any time.
Yeah, they would raise a Roman they raise an Aquilia, like they'd raise a Roman eagle, but the eagle would be like one winged and holding up the sign that says nobody said they liked my art and it's my birthday. So Aaron McClear, a neighborhood spokesman for Mr. Zuckerberg and Ms. Chan, said the couple tried hard.
I got a full-time job for the guy who runs my like intra-neighborhood relations with the cardiologists.
Yeah, intra-neighborhood relations includes a public relations team, but actually the image processing team and the drone surveillance team is much, much larger. Right, the public relations team. Look, they go out and like, yeah, they'll play basketball with the cardiologists.
Yeah, if you see a Mark Zuckerberg guy in a blue vest, he's actually there to like get intelligence on you.
Yeah,
fluorescent blue Patagonia vest.
Yeah, like if you're walking and you just see some guys in like San Francisco 49ers hats and like Timberland boots and like normal jeans, they're almost certainly actually undercover private security who are going to like rendition you to one of the bunkers if you walk past the house.
It's also everything being like top of the line for this is really funny because it's like the image of like poaching a Unit 8200 guy away from like, you know, drone striking families to be like, yeah, I want you to watch a bunch of surveillance cameras of this insanely rich neighborhood in San Francisco.
Yeah.
Just all day.
Yeah, all day. Just, hey, you know what? What if one of those senior cardiologists looks a little bit froggy? We gotta make sure that, like, you know, the Facebook early response team is on it. So, a neighborhood spokesman for Mr. Zuckerberg and Ms. Chan said the couple tried hard to do right by their neighbors, but Meta requires heavy security for its chief executive because of credible threats, and they will move cameras off of neighbors if they ask. But you can't. Who are you going to ask? The guy? The undercover surveillance guy?
That's like, actually, I'm fine with it. I would just live normal style, but the company, which is me, by the way, the company insists that I be extremely cosseted.
Yeah. All I want to do is hang out with my neighbor. Like, I want to play the games of pickup basketball instead of the private security guys I deputized to like I want to do the San Francisco Shura. I think that would be great if we talked.
I mean, like, because like, if you think about the board of Facebook, right, like because it's all Mark Zuckerberg orbiters, that like, of course they feel this way. Would there actually be any stock effect on Facebook of Mark Zuckerberg getting Luigi Mangione? I have no idea. Probably less than he thinks.
Yeah.
What is his value add besides having a lot of money at this point?
What's he done lately other than, hey, the metaverse? You know, that's any minute now. It's called Meta after all. You know, after the metaverse.
The Luigi Mangione challenge to that kind of corporate leadership is effectively like, what is it that you say that you know, do here, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, yeah, the United Health stock, it did go down, you know. Anyway, the family staff provides neighbors with notice of potentially disruptive events and gives them a contact phone number to report problems. Staff for neighbors are reimbursed for ride shares to encourage them not to park their own cars in the neighborhood. So yeah, hey, sorry, we are having a sort of a Gilded Age bacchanal in our gigantic compound that we have taken over most of the neighborhood with. So here's a number you can call to ask us to turn it down, and then we will drone strike you with pure money.
Trying to think about, just to like eat the sympathy for the cardiologists here for a second, trying to think about going back to somebody's house and they're like, oh, sorry, we have to get Uber because my neighbor is Mark Zuckerberg. So we're actually like not allowed to park on the street in case somebody car bombs him.
So Mr. McClear said, the spokesman, Mark, Priscilla, and their children have made Palo Alto their home for more than a decade. They've made Palo Palo Alto their home for more than a decade, in which they've slowly just walled off bigger bits of it.
They've also made Palo Alto their home in the same way that Joseph Fritzl made his daughter his wife, you know, in a really deeply non-consensual and criminal way for which they should certainly be punished.
Yeah, it was also just like, it feels like making home in a way that in the same way that like a fucking like settler makes his home in the West Bank, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, this is like, he's made it his home.
Not quite the same way, because obviously in the West Bank, like, you know, you get shot and stuff for like stepping in the wrong way. And like Zuckerberg probably wants to do that, but he can't. And so he has to sort of like be annoying enough to sort of get people to wish that he would shoot them.
Yeah. He definitely is so resents that he has to employ a neighborhood spokesman and has to give these people the sop of a contact number they can complain to if the bacchanal gets too loud, because he's like, no, if the world were right and just and I was the Caesar that I know I am, and we know that he's like this from like at least temperamentally from reading his books, what he wants to do is just like, you know, if someone call that number, if you call and complain, it activates a little device, because he's bought the parking spot in front of your house. Actually, it activates a little device that opens the floor of that parking spot, and then a middle finger rises up from out of the floor, some fireworks go off, and then it retracts, and that's it. And that's all that happens.
Yeah.
They value being members of the community. What community are you a member of?
Yeah, you cannot be in any community as a billionaire. You can't even be in a community of billionaires.
Yeah.
That's why they all hate each other.
Yeah, you can be at best like loose associates, right?
These guys, these guys love to sort of like talk about being part of the community while also being like the most antisocial motherfuckers like imaginable. It's not, like there is like a type of person who like longs for community, or like say they long for community. It's like, no, you can't like even talk to people properly. Like you can't even like show like basic decency to people. And I feel like it feels like it's very much like part of that. So like not to necessarily say that but I mean, I was going to say like maybe there's this, you know, the cynical part of me is like, yeah, they don't actually believe they're like part of any community. They want to just sort of like run the place in the way that they want to. But he actually does give me the impression of like someone who believes that this is like healthy social behavior. Like he's doing something like good for everyone else. And therefore he is like, you know, he's using his like status and power to sort of contribute to the community in like a very unique way. It just so happens that way is like, don't ever walk, don't drive your car, maybe like don't do anything at all.
Well, I think the thing is like all these billionaires, they see themselves as Greek gods, and they are right only in the sense that the Greek gods were fractious, hated each other, and basically spent their lives capriciously tormenting mortals and one another. Right? There is no community that you possibly could have with people over whom you have so much power. And that's how Mark Zuckerberg, we know this from having like actually knowing about him as a person, that's how he wants to be in a community. Is he, I'm a member of the community. I'm the god of it. That's a member, says, Mr. Zuckerberg's expansion in Crescent Park was revealed through interviews with 9 neighbors, 7 of whom would not speak publicly for fear of retribution. From their fellow community member who loves being in the community.
That's a fairly normal thing to say about your neighbor. I'm scared. I'm scared of him, so please keep me anonymous.
Yeah, as well as a review of building permits, affidavits, certificates, information of limited liability companies, home deeds, recordings of local commission meetings, and emails between neighbors and city officials. But few know firsthand of the decades-long disruption, noise, and surveillance and uncertainty this person can create better than his neighbors in Crescent Park. No neighborhood wants to be occupied, said Michael Keichnick, whose home on Hamilton Avenue is bound on 3 sides by property owned by Zuckerberg. But that's exactly what they've done. They've occupied our neighborhood. And by the way, right, the city, he tried to do this all at once in 2016, and then the city said, no, you can't build a compound all at once.
Yeah, we would like to be a city instead of like a kind of feudal domain.
Yes. Yeah, well, look, I am a senior cardiologist, not a villain.
Yeah, turns out that like, those guys do vote and pay taxes and stuff. So like we would like ideally not to be American Versailles.
Well, but the city then allowed him to create it anyway, so long as he did it slowly and piecemeal.
I feel like that's 2 podcasts today. We've done this exact story. And
yeah. Check out No Gods, No Mayors. But so basically it's like, yeah, if he could do it slowly and piecemeal, then he was able to do it. It's that he couldn't move all those lots together at once. Just the other day, for example, the police department provided signs to affix to trees, creating a long tow-away zone on a public road, blocking blocking neighbors from parking their own cars there for 5 hours on a Wednesday evening. The reason, Keichnick learned, was that Mr. Zuckerberg was hosting a backyard barbecue and the police had assigned its officer in charge of visiting foreign dignitaries to assist him.
That's so funny to be like, I made it as like a biotech person, or like I sold a .com startup or whatever, or like I'm so good at heart surgery, I make $600,000 a year. I had to walk 5 miles to and from my car because Mark Zuckerberg is having a barbecue and MBS is there.
Yeah, but because we needed a takeoff and landing space for the Predator drone. Then Mark Zuckerberg, his comfort Predator drone that he really likes, and as a community member, he would really appreciate if you let him fly it.
I think being one of those people, being part of the, like, let's say comfortably like 0.1%, right, has to involve like a decent amount of daily humiliation at the hands of the 0.01%, if that follows. But like, this seems egregious, even though by those standards. Like, if you're the kind of person where like table stakes already is you will never know poverty or like any kind of suffering that is remediable by money ever again, right? That's the baseline. All of those people are living in the kind of the culture future, you know, where like we've just abolished a bunch of human suffering, right? All you have is ego at that point, and those people are therefore flexing on you constantly. They're constantly the kind of like grain of sand in your shoe. This is like putting a rock in your shoe. This is that much worse.
Well, this is like one of the best ways to be like habitually humiliated in public in the medieval era was just to be like a courtier of an easily pissed off king, right? Hey, you own a lot of land and you're the landlord of all that land. You, as you say, will never know poverty. But you know what? You got to be in the court of the king, I'm afraid.
Yeah,
there's nowhere else to be.
You are like as safe and as rich as you can, as it's like plausible for someone who is, you know, still a human being to be. However, this hooting moron is kind of your god.
Yeah, this hooting moron gets to use you as a footstool, and you have to say thank you. So Keichnick is the co-founder of a cell phone company and now works as a green energy advocate.
Yeah.
Classic. He said that Mr. Zuckerberg, through his staff, has offered to buy his house, but he lived here for more than 30 years and didn't want to move. Mr. Zuckerberg has been in a big real estate buying and selling spree. For example, buying huge amounts of the Hawaiian island of Kauai. He was buying a huge mansion in Washington, D.C., and so on and so on.
I got to be honest, if I had the opportunity to be the kind of nail house stopping Mark Zuckerberg from building his Versailles, and I know how much money Mark Zuckerberg has, I would hold out for an insultingly larger amount of money as well.
Oh, yeah. It's got to be a Billy. Got to be a Billy or above. You got to put me in. You got to make me be able to have other 0.1%ers as footstools, and then I will consider selling you this house. You know, give me footstool money. The purchases often fly under the radar because they're made with limited liability companies, always with different nature-themed names, such as Pine Burrow or Seed Breeze. Seed Breeze. Ugh. What the? Have you ever been in nature? What is a seed breeze? Is it pollen?
A seed breeze is like those 2 weeks in London where all of the what's the
linden trees?
Yeah, all of the linden trees are like fruiting at once, and it smells like cum. Ugh. Yeah, that's a seed breeze.
God. So Peter Balte, a Palo Alto architect who is a member of the review board, he was doing all of his renovation, said he found the proposal to demolish 4 homes, then build a 7,000 square foot basement under all of them was odd. So he went to the site to see it in person before casting a vote. He said a security guard approached him. I said, I'm standing on the sidewalk looking at this project for review, and the guard said, we'd appreciate it if you could move on. Mr. Balte recalled, I was pretty shocked. It's a public sidewalk. Again, these people shouldn't know that because being moved on from a public sidewalk, that's for like homeless people or, you know, like, or the poor or, you know, like non-white people.
I'm not supposed to be controlled out of public space that way.
Yeah. The board quashed the plan back then, but Mr. Zuckerberg moved ahead with it anyway, just more slowly with one or two homes at a time. Are we just
betting that Mark Zuckerberg has just like dug the bunker under these houses anyway and defies anyone to find out?
Yes, that's what he's done.
Yeah, that tracks. That makes sense. 100%. Okay, sure. Why is everyone so tunnel pilled lately? What the fuck? Why are we as a world getting more like subterranean with it all the time?
Greer Stone, a member of the city council who lives near Crescent Park, said the city has followed the letter of its code but not the spirit, and allowing Mr. Zuckerberg to take over the neighborhood. He's been finding loopholes around our local laws and zoning ordinances. We should never be a gated, gilded city on a hill where people don't know their neighbors. Yeah, we should be a gated, gilded city on a hill where people do know their neighbors. God damn it.
Exactly, right? Like, yeah.
Stop using us as footstools. Fuck. Yeah. So, party time usually includes valet parking for partygoers in gowns and tuxedos or costume if the theme calls for them. The music is often loud, prompting complaints to the police. Neighbors say they often don't get a response. But Mr. Zuckerberg and Ms. Chan held their wedding at the property. In October, they had a disco party there, with Zuckerberg in white pants and a gold chain, and Chan in a sequin gold pants and a one-shouldered top. Mark Zuckerberg wrote the following on Instagram: "Disco Queen wanted a party."
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, right, as well about what makes this so antisocial is, so you're a loud music guy. Fine. Whatever. Lots of people are. You own a decent portion of Hawaii. You know where you could play a lot of really loud music and probably not noise pollute any more than like killing a few airborne birds? Probably Hawaii.
Oh, come
and yet
on.
you choose to do it in the suburban mega compound you're building.
Yeah. So Mr. Keichnick said when Zuckerberg bought the home next door, Zuckerberg's staff members informed him that the wooden fences separating the two homes, which had a gate for children to scurry through, didn't meet Facebook standards. It has since been rebuilt twice, taller and thicker each time.
Yeah, it's like, well, it's fine, but we have put in a bunch of landmines on our side, so like, don't let your kids through there.
Yeah. Mr. Zuckerberg's staff do claim to have made some accommodations. For example, security guards now sit in quiet electric vehicles rather than in loud gas-powered cars. Mr. Zuckerberg does not attend the annual block parties, which are now very small, but he does occasionally send things like an ice cream cart. Or if he sends gifts to his neighbors when the racket gets loud, including bottles of wine, chocolates, and Krispy Kreme donuts. The most memorable gift delivery, and this is where the article ends, was noise-canceling headphones.
Oh my God. This is getting scary as well. Like, if you're one of these people, I'm kind of thinking that, like, just based on the extent of the security, I'm like, you're in your backyard grilling. You don't want to make any sudden movements with like a gunmetal colored object in case the sniper nest on the roof of one of Mark Zuckerberg's 11 houses just like domes you off instantly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and you don't want to walk too close to the fence because, hey, maybe you were approaching it threateningly. Maybe you step on a landmine.
Yeah, I hate to say it about people this rich, but they don't deserve this. They might deserve some other things, but they don't deserve this.
Yeah. So I think that's about it for us today. But
big drawing of Mark Zuckerberg and Priscilla Chan with two bad neighbors.
We have a merch store up now. It is open. You can buy Avignon Pope shirts, Lagoon shirts, confuse your friends, the original phone cop shirt. You can buy the uncle shirt to confuse your friends more. So it's no longer pre-orders. You can just order them now, and they are in stock and will ship to you.
Oh my God. After like 5 years, we finally made a shop.
Yes. It will still... New shirts will still always be on a pre-order basis just because of the way we work with the printers, but they are here and you can get them. So
I want to do some more shirts. I have some ideas.
Oh yeah, of course. Anyway, I want to thank you very much, of course, for listening to the show. Remember that there is a Patreon episode on Thursday, so you can subscribe to listen to that. And otherwise, we will see you in a few days. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.